So girls, to form the body of the bag, we will first sew on the handles and only then attach these strips. To sew on the handles, we need markers. Now together we will make the necessary markings. And using one part as an example, I will show you the entire process of sewing on all the handles. So we need to do this conditionally. For now, let's roughly form a square by eye. We have 94 stitches around in total. And on this front side, we cast on 24 stitches and made some increases here as well. So we allocate 26 stitches for the front side. Got it. Next. Here, conditionally speaking. For now, just by eye, carefully mark your precise corner right here and then draw a straight line that is perfectly perpendicular to the established base. If your inherent sense of proportion isn't quite enough, you can accurately lay it out perpendicularly, perhaps using a reliable tool, just like this. And finally, securely fix the corner stitch with a distinct marker. We'll use that as our reference point. Carefully count out exactly 26 individual stitches, making sure to include this very first one in your total count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. Here is the second stitch. Next. Now in this direction we count out 21 stitches, starting from the next chain after the marker. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. We place a marker on the 22nd. This 22nd stitch will mark the beginning of this side. From here, we count 26 stitches, including this stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. Between these markers, you should also have 21 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Now we check to make sure everything is even. Our stitches are different. This side of mine is a bit wider than this one. First of all, you can tighten it up. That's exactly what I'm going to do. You can shift the markers a little, but don't rush. So the marking is done. These are your side parts. They are narrower, and these are your front and back panels. Next, starting from the markers. From each central marker, count 2 stitches. And place a marker on every second one. 1, 2. Place a marker on the second stitch. And in this direction, 1, 2, place a marker. These are your handles. This is the part that your handles will cover. And do the same with each marker. 1, 2, place a marker on the second stitch. So from marker to marker, including the marker, there are 5 stitches. 1, 2, place a marker. It's much easier with markers. You can visually see what you're getting. Keep them on your work as long as possible, for as long as you can. Even when you're sewing on the handle, they are your guide, what you should focus on and follow, and also where to look, so to speak, in this particular situation. Here's what it looks like. This is where our handles will be. I'm trying on the handle. The handle will go from the front to the back wall. These essential parts will be placed precisely right here, in this specific location. On the edge stitches where the markers are, the end of the stitch where the marker is on this side, the end of the stitch where the second marker is on this side. This is conditionally at the central marker. It will be easier for you to sew this way. It's very difficult and ineffective to attach these handles with pins, so you just keep the marker in sight at all times. And I will explain the whole process to you in detail, how we sew. Actually, sewing it on is not very difficult. The cord is soft and easy to pierce, and there aren't many stitches here. Once you try it, you'll see. Let's move on to sewing. I'll leave this cord. It's similar to this one. I'll leave this thread. The shade is similar to the cord. It will contrast nicely with the leather. I think it will look beautiful. Let's start sewing it on. We position the handle so that the end of this loop, the one with the marker, matches up with the corner on the leather. We pull this part almost straight up, not like this, but just a little bit down, just slightly. Let's secure the thread under the leather, either with a knot or, like I have here, a loop. I'm looking carefully to see how it will be. We fix with our eyes at what level. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. For me, the edge of the handle will end around the 5th row. The edge of the handle. Keep in mind, your leather will also shift a bit while sewing, so this isn't the final version. It's just a reference point. Now I pierce this hole and sew all the way through your workpiece. Next, you don't need to worry about how the backside looks. Later we'll be joining the corners and the seams won't be visible. So just sew as it turns out. We return the needle to the hole where we started. Here, I really like to make a strong double stitch for much better and more secure fixation. While sewing, periodically make sure to carefully examine yourself by folding it precisely like this. We'll have a gap here and we need to sew it so that it doesn't get pulled tight. This leather should lay nicely along the contour. I'll be sewing and explaining. So I've stitched and now I'm returning again to the marker. The marker that is positioned here truly wants to be involved in the process, but you absolutely do not need to permanently sew it in. So with careful precision, I will pierce through this specific point here once again. Straight like this, my dear girls, meaning you absolutely need to make sure that in every single instance you are completely aware and fully understand that my marker slipped off. But I remember that I have the second loop. How do you make sure it goes straight? You just check like this so that this part is perpendicular, or rather parallel, to this one. Then this part will go straight as well. Check yourself every time, because when sewing everything can shift, and quite a lot. Make a couple of stitches, check, bend it, make another, check again. You can sew one stitch twice, but actually it's not necessary. Here, everything will be fixed so well that it will hold perfectly. I won't do it twice, I make one stitch at a time. So I move like this, sewing in a straight line. You see, I've made 3 stitches. I always make sure to check myself. Once again, how everything is going for me. Yes, so far I haven't gone off track, everything is fine. And now I've already had a shift happen already. The skin is a little bit higher than the 5th row. It jumped up a bit. I don't know how to say it correctly. It jumped up, yes. That's normal. It's normal when sewing. The main thing is to keep this in mind when sewing the 2nd, 3rd, and subsequent parts so that everything fits together. Like this. We move on then. We will go through this part together completely, making sure to take our time so that you feel comfortable with each step. I will be here to guide you and explain everything clearly, so you won't have any questions about it by the end. The needle came out, let's take a look. Again, we bent it and checked it again, just to be sure. Yes, everything's fine so far. Let's continue. So, in reality, this particular edge of mine has actually jumped up almost a whole row. When you sew this part, be sure to take this into account and sew in such a way that your shift matches accordingly, making sure the alignment is as precise as possible. That is, you'll have to adjust a little if something happens there, so pay attention and be ready to make small corrections if needed. If the shift isn't quite right, we've reached the corner. Places like corners, for example, can sometimes be stitched twice. For example, like this. Let's keep watching. This is precisely how I typically sew straight right here. This last stitch is also done twice. Here, make sure that your leather, it truly doesn't shift at all. And I carefully sew it twice with precision. Next, I'll do it like this for now, that is, we've sewn it on this side. Next, the leather bends and the whole piece bends as well. Here's what we have and how the stitching should lie here. We fix this in our minds visually. We need to bring the needle from the inside to here. We do it like this, just piercing through randomly, that's enough. Our cord goes straight for a few centimeters, about 2 centimeters. That's it, we are at this spot. Be sure to bend the handle. And it is absolutely best to carefully make the very first stitch, all the while making completely sure that your handle gently bends and flexes as intended. Keep in mind our marker, the level where we're stitching. So this is how it should be. And right here I pierce through. And carefully make a secure double stitch at this specific spot. As you can see, the leather will stick out a little. That's exactly how it should be. Next, in the same way, we continue to meticulously stitch through each and every individual piece. Stitch in a straight line. Oh. Here, let's look. This is how it will look. It wants to shift a little. It wants to shift a bit. Don't let the delicate leather significantly change position. Here as well, watch as I stitch. I check myself. Right along the precise line we're carefully moving. And here, this particular end seems to be noticeably higher than the intended stitching level. If that specific issue didn't happen before, it might very well happen right here. You absolutely need to stitch it so that it doesn't stick up at all. So you must pull it much tighter for this very important reason. You can play around with tightening your fabric securely. So here, thanks to that, you can achieve a much better result. We continue. So what I do is I just carefully hold it firmly in place with my finger, exactly the way I precisely need to position it. And also the fabric, at what level it should be in relation to the corresponding holes. I will hold it a little bit with my hand, and then I will carefully stitch it in the appropriate places. And my skin won't be pulling up too much. Just like that. There's already a very, very tiny amount of thread remaining, almost none at all. So I took a brand new thread, and let's now smoothly continue our discussion. I pull it very tight, securely with all my strength. And in close relation to the very edge stitch, I also make absolutely sure that at its precise end, at the exact level of its termination, if I can articulate it in that particular way, I carefully sew it on securely. This, I believe, is exactly what I mean to convey to you. Marker wants to come off, so I remove it. Yes. The last 2 stitches. Yes. And here we meticulously perform this action not just once, but precisely 2 separate times, ensuring thoroughness and completion in our process. Так. Next, we carefully remove the temporary markers, as their purpose has now been served and we no longer have any need for them in this stage of the process. Following that, we meticulously sew this particular part together, ensuring a secure and neat seam. It is crucial to perform this action precisely like this, making absolutely certain that this specific end, the very edge we are working with, is perfectly aligned and secured. I also meticulously stitch it like this. I have a strong, durable thread right here, so I carefully take it and then proceed to make a few precise stitches, just like this. Next, I will continue with the process. I carefully connect it to the sturdy cord. I then meticulously sew the cord together, ensuring a strong and secure bond. But it is absolutely crucial that I do not touch the delicate leather at all during this process. This particular step is incredibly important. We are specifically sewing the cord itself, so you can clearly observe precisely how I am carefully stitching it, demonstrating the technique. Everything stitches together perfectly here. When braiding the cord, it gets fixed so well that it's hard to unravel later. So in this regard, don't worry. And then we repeat the same process with this part. That is, we bring our thread out at this level and stitch here. Like this. 1. We stitch 2, or you can do 3. As many as you want. I will now carefully stitch 3 stitches, and then I will gently bring our loop to the other side, completing this step. There, this is precisely what we currently have. This particular section extends with great precision all the way to the very end of the 4th row, and then seamlessly transitions into the very beginning of the 5th row. And we need to carefully sew literally all the way up to the precise level, ensuring everything is perfectly aligned. Of the 5th or 6th hole, sew the fabric. Nothing else is needed. So we simply, just like that, along the very edge where the skin precisely meets, we carefully stitch through quite densely so that everything is sewn together very nicely and also quite securely. To make the stitches completely invisible, You carefully insert the needle into the very same hole it originally came out of, and then gently move it over to this specific area here. Here, it's precisely the same process. You meticulously find the exact spot where the needle initially emerged and then carefully move it over to this designated location here. Again, do the same here and move over to this side. And you make as many stitches as you feel you need so that everything is fixed really well. Well, at this level, I'll go down a little bit more now. So at this particular level, I'll finish. It's absolutely enough. You'll still be perfectly able to feel precisely how much you truly need, so that the corner looks beautifully like this, and then it gracefully widens out. That way, this entire section looks really nice and aesthetically pleasing, and that's essentially it. You genuinely don't need to make any complicated knots. You just simply tuck your thread inside. Here, if you want, you can secure it somehow, like with a little loop, but that's not necessary at all. It's actually very hard to unravel things like this. In fact, sew the cord together. And this is truly exactly how your very own first part of the handle is sewn. Accordingly, you sew the second one in exactly the same way, by analogy. This part will pull a little bit, of course. It might get in your way a bit, but as soon as you secure this part well with a few stitches, the rest of the sewing will go smoothly. It'll be fine. And this is how we shape each corner. Sew the handles on your own now, following the same method I showed you. Let's see what we've got and move on to sewing the side strips. I think I forgot to mention an important point. Here I'm sewing on the second part of the handle. Pay attention right here. The edges of the leather should be facing each other when you sew the pieces together. That is this edge right here. Visually, it should be opposite the single one. So you twist it so that they're even, and then you sew them together. That's what I wanted to tell you. And so, girls, the handles are now securely sewn onto our finished base, as you can see. Right away, the beautiful bag immediately starts to truly take its intended shape. It feels so natural, just as it was originally intended to be. And I really like how these perfectly crafted handles truly complement and enhance the overall design. Complete the overall aesthetic look of the bag. Now, we really need to move on to the clasp, which is quite special and unique. The sturdy clasp is securely attached in this particular manner with a robust carabiner that conveniently opens in this specific and intuitive way. We secure it and close the bag. Here are our top mono holes, which will be sewn to the top of the bag and will securely fasten and firmly hold this particular section in place. Following this, we will explore a more aesthetically pleasing and ornamental type of strap, designed primarily for decorative purposes rather than heavy-duty securing. And don't forget, girls, about the D-rings. D-rings can be easy to forget. I've forgotten them myself before. It's unpleasant when you sew it on and realize you forgot to insert the D-ring. So your task before sewing is to do it like this, to make sure it doesn't fall off. For example, take a pin and secure it. Right now, I'll just secure it and then we'll adjust where exactly we want to fix it. In other words, don't forget about the D-ring. I'll start sewing from this side where I have the seam so you can see how I close it up. It went a little off for me. I'll be able to close it, but just another millimeter, half a centimeter, and it would have looked bad for me here. So I'll have to play around with it a bit, but what can you do? So for now, I'm removing this part and this as well. And I'm doing this specifically so it doesn't get in the way, you see? And I'm doing it so. Where do we sew our placket? We sew our placket, and I place these 2 rows of mono stitches below the level of the top braid. Of course, we'll center it. Our marker is still in place to set the center. Here's our center. And this is how the sewing will look. I intentionally made the bag taller so that this placket wouldn't reach the end. I just like it that way. I don't know why. I just like this idea. It could go all the way to the end. It would be worse if it were longer. That would be worse. But when it's just a few millimeters short, it actually looks pretty good. You can secure some parts with pins. Well, actually, I'm securing the half ring so it doesn't fall out, so I don't forget about it. I'm telling you, girls, because you really can forget. It's happened to me before. Yes, here, I'm making sure everything is centered. Like this. I'm not removing the marker. Let it stay there while you're sewing. It's your guide. I don't use any more pins because they'll just prick your hands. You just keep adjusting as you go. And that's it. We start sewing from the top part. We have a lot of mono threads here. I won't dwell on this for too long. Everything is clear here. I've explained the main points. We secure our thread. And here's an important point. This is an important point about sewing. We pin the first one. That's what you need to do. It's preferable, highly preferable, to sew this top row invisibly from the back. Let me explain what I mean. That is just from this side, right? Insert the needle into the hole where the threads come out. This is only for the top. Why? Because there won't be a lining here and everything will be visible. Here you can move however you like this. The main thing here is to pierce the right spot. Where does the needle come out? It's literally positioned on these top monoholes. After that, you can sew it however you truly wish. It really doesn't significantly matter. Here, I personally sew it twice, ensuring a secure and lasting attachment. These monoholes, although it's not strictly required, but it certainly gives a much better and more secure fixation. To make absolutely sure that everything is perfectly aligned and positioned, you can pay attention to this. Make sure there are no misalignments. Always be sure to keep this very important point in mind. That is, constantly direct your placket towards the center. And here, it's not focusing, but I explained it. So you find the exact hole where it originally came out and then carefully pierce right through it. I only sew this very top row very carefully. Double steps, girls. Then everything with single steps. You can also do double steps here and here. And we can move. Then everything with individual single steps, allowing for precise and controlled movements. You can also do more dynamic double steps right here, providing flexibility in your approach, and we can move chaotically, exploring various directions and patterns without a predetermined order, embracing a more unpredictable and free-flowing approach to our actions. Next, we need to carefully go down a level, and to achieve this, we precisely insert the needle into the very same spot right here, and then gently sort of lower it to carefully bring it out just below the surface. We need to go down a level, so here we insert the needle into the same spot and then sort of lower it to bring it out below, like this. And here I move with single stitches, we sew through. First, carefully consider the square, then if you desire, you have the option to precisely cut it to meticulously move it over to this specific area, or alternatively, you can deliberately choose to leave your loop securely in place with the remaining thread positioned carefully behind your current working section, ensuring everything stays neat and organized for the next step of your project. This allows for flexibility in your crafting approach, whether you prefer a clean separation or a continuous flow, depending on the intricate design you are aiming to achieve with your materials. As you can see, I won't spend any more time on this. I controlled stitching. It attaches. Good. Now, no stitch control, just sew. It's clear. So I think it's clear the main thing is don't let your placket shift. The main thing is don't let your placket shift. We can meet and go through this stage together. Here we already have plastic canvas and I'll show you how I sew here. Well, everything else I think is clear. We sew everything together. After sewing these and these parts, we secure our half ring. If you want, you can make a double stitch like this one. And that's it. Here we've stitched a little square. You can cut it off and start again as well, whatever is convenient for you. Let's meet at this stage. And here we sew and then continue on your own. And accordingly, the second one, this part is sewn in the same way. Here I have sewn this part here. And now I've reached this point to the place where our base begins and which is new. First we remove the marker. It served as our guide to the center. And now I'll show you how I do it. So first I'll sew this part. I insert the needle at an angle, that is, I pierce it so that it goes in at an angle. And right here I carefully pierce it precisely like this, you see. So if I don't have this thimble, then you need to be careful here, so you don't hurt yourself, right? Next you insert the needle here. Or maybe it's better. Well, okay, wherever is actually convenient. Here you pierce it again like this. So you understand how to secure it, right? because where we have the canvas, we just can't get underneath there. But here you can, there are just 3 stitches. It's not that much. Yes. Like this, just so exactly. And we bring it out, for example, here, all the way here, right? We carefully bring it out to the world and stitch it. And now from this very point, we can already truly dive in here. Well, and here we already have, of course, you can sew, of course. Of course. That is, there's no bottom there anymore. You get it, right? You make the stitches and then you just move on. Everything will be closed up here. There's no need to invent anything. Actually, I'm running out of thread, so I'll just cut it off there now. It's hard to get in here, of course, but oops. This is the most difficult spot in the whole stitching process, I think. You have to do it purely by feel, blindly, and solely by physical touch. And protect your fingers. That's it. Here my short thread ran out, so I'll stitch it like this to secure it. I'll cut it off, and the stitch will remain. Now we lay this one down. We lay the second one the same way. We sew it on exactly the same way. You can mark the center for yourself. Here, you can count the center by the stitches. Eyeballing it works great here. But actually the main thing here is to tuck this part under the top braid and then keep moving along the center. Or fix it in place if eyeballing doesn't work well for you, or you can use a marker here. That is, whatever is more convenient for you. And when we sew it on, we'll take a look at our work. Let's see what we've got. We'll sew in the lining, attach our strap, and the bag will be ready. So girls, I'm showing you the flaps sewn on both sides in daylight. And this is how the bag looks when it's closed, and like this when it's open. If we do it like this, the zipper drops a little inside. I have metal tags. They fit perfectly like this, right in the center of the bag, along the top edge. It looks really beautiful. And the bag turned out to be incredibly stylish, just gorgeous. Now we're going to sew the lining for the bag, and then we'll attach the strap. What do we need for the lining? I'm going to do a little bit of drawing here, since our bag noticeably narrows at the very top section. We'll need to cut out 2 pieces of fabric. I'm drawing a rough sketch like this. This is the top part where it narrows, and then now I'll show you how we take the measurements. And we will have 2 distinct parts, that is to say, one part like this and then another one. So, in order to find this value, we need to measure the bag along the top edge, around the circumference. We take a measuring tape. I'm going to sew the lining 1 centimeter below the edge, so I place the tape 1 centimeter down from the top, below the edge, and pressing it firmly against the sides. This is how I measure the circumference. Fold the corners in by 1 centimeter. This is important so that you'll have enough fabric when sewing. the handles actually make the entire filming process a little bit difficult to manage. Like this. Not everything fits in the frame, but the main idea is clear. So, and this is indeed the very last fragment that we have here. For me, I take the measurement of 53 centimeters. So this is our width 1. Width 1 equals circumference 1, the one we just measured, divided by 2. My circumference is 53. I divide it by 2. That makes 26.5. And I add 3 centimeters. These are seam allowances. So I have exactly 29.5 centimeters. That is the width 1 precisely. Width 2 is accurately and precisely measured. The most straightforward and easiest way to accurately measure it is by using a reliable method. Along the bottom. Here is the bottom for you like this. Along the perimeter of the bottom, that is, I'll show you from the outside, because right now the bag is deep and everything is dark inside. So you measure like this only from the inside. It's not very convenient. You can measure in segments, in parts. Here I get 72 centimeters, but that's too much. I already measured from the inside and I got 4 centimeters less, 68 centimeters. So you get the idea. Measure from the inside, or you can also measure from the outside and subtract a few centimeters. Basically, it won't be noticeable. The main thing is not to take off too much so your lining doesn't end up too small. But ideally, measure from the inside along the dent. So I take the value 68. The width, which is 2, is 68 divided by 2, which equals 34. Then we add an additional 3 for the necessary seam allowances, so a total of 37 centimeters. 37 centimeters. Here, accordingly, it's also 37 centimeters. This height here, pay attention for me. This particular height is approximately 2.5 to 3 centimeters in total, but we add 1.5 centimeters of seam allowance to this height. So this particular height here is exactly 1.5 centimeters of seam allowance, which is then added to our height. That's what we've sewn. In total, I have 4 centimeters. This height here, we need to find this one. We look for it like this. Again, step back 1 centimeter from the edge. And along the wall, you lay out 1 centimeter down. Place it and press it against the walls. Next, you carefully move along the very bottom, precisely following the base, and then turn sharply right here. For me, that is precisely 54 centimeters in length. So the total height, the overall vertical measurement, my complete and entire height, is precisely 54 centimeters. When I meticulously divide this total measurement by 2, that specific mathematical operation yields a result of exactly 27 centimeters. This represents the precise halfway point of the original 54 centimeter dimension, right? So to the initial 27 centimeters, I will carefully add an additional 3 centimeters for the seam allowances. This calculation then precisely makes it a total of 30 centimeters. Consequently, the overall height measurement here becomes exactly 30 centimeters. And when we cut the fabric, we need to keep in mind that for the 30 centimeters, we subtract 4 centimeters, so we make a height of 26 centimeters with a width of 37, and the remaining 4 centimeters we make with a width of 29. So your lining will have this kind of shape. In actual fact, when you are sewing, you really need to make this particular seam as incredibly smooth as humanly possible, because it will consistently run along this entire side of the fabric. And to completely avoid any sharp corners, you should and can even slightly lower this particular value a bit more to make it much smoother and more refined. That's not a problem. You can actually quite easily create this particular slant or incline to be significantly longer. That is, since I'm not a seamstress and I do a lot of things by feel when it comes to sewing, let's say, especially with bags, I'm suggesting the same approach to you. If you are a seamstress, you probably know better how to do this more skillfully. So I've given you a guideline. We will carefully cut out two identical pieces of fabric precisely like this. Next, we will meticulously iron them, ensuring they are perfectly smooth. Then I will clearly show you step by step which specific seam to make and exactly when to make it, and we will diligently sew each part as we progressively go along. And then I'll show you how to sew them in. This is what my fabric pieces for the lining look like. Here are the edges, 4 centimeters each. However, when I am carefully sewing this particular piece, I might go a little bit more smoothly and deliberately like this, ensuring that the lining sits much more nicely and securely inside the bag. So, the very first and most important seams will be precisely made right here at this specific point. Fold the top edge 1.5 centimeters from the right side to the wrong side. Secure it with pins. This part. Carefully secure it firmly on both individual pieces of fabric material. Yes, definitely the second one indeed. Sew along both of these pieces of fabric and then continue with the next step. We have sewn 2 seams. Now we need to sew our lining together. We place it right sides together and carefully pin it smoothly along the entire contour. The sewing process should be executed smoothly and continuously. There is absolutely no need to repeat the corner section. So that neatly your lining looks nice inside the bag. We need to make 3 seams together. Now I'll mark 2 and explain the third one. Here's the first one on this side. Second. So you made a precise seam here, here, and then we carefully sew the bottom. And when your lining is completely sewn on all 4 sides, we will then shape the overall depth of the bag, the very bottom. I'll show you how, and that's it. The lining will be ready. Yes, indeed. The lining is sewn. All that's left is to shape the bottom of the lining. How is this done? You carefully fold the lining in this particular manner so that a distinct corner gradually forms at the very bottom of the item. This seam here lines up with this one. That's your guide. Then your triangle will truly have perfectly equal sides, each and every one, right? Just like that. Now we take a ruler. The depth of our bag is 15 to 16 centimeters. I'll use the value 15 because it's a bit less on the inside, right? And we mark out these 15 so that 7.5 centimeters are on this side and 7.5 on this side. So 15 divided by 2 gives us two equal values. You can draw it or you can fix it with pins. I'm a fan of fixing things with pins. One. There, just like that. So you ultimately end up with an isosceles triangle with perfectly equal sides, right? And this particular part is precisely what we're going to carefully sew. On this other side, it's formed in exactly the same way by analogy. These are our very last stitches, and then we'll proceed to sew in the lining. That's precisely how we meticulously and carefully made the full 15 centimeters. There, exactly 7.5. Here, just about like this, and then 1. This precise measurement was crucial for our project. And on this side too. Like that. We stitch these seams, and that's it. And now we start sewing in our lining. Blogger, the lining is sewn. It's on the inside. Now we trim off the excess threads. Inside, we can clearly see the bottom section. Yes, it is perfectly formed and ready. And now, with careful consideration, we are going to meticulously sew this piece onto our bag. These specific seams, located right here, they will be precisely aligned with the designated bands on the bag, ensuring a perfect and professional finish. This is where we'll sew them on. We'll start from here. Take some sharp pointed pins, and it's always better to carefully pin your delicate lining all around the entire perimeter so that it absolutely doesn't go anywhere at all, ensuring a perfect secure placement. So that, first and foremost, you can clearly and precisely observe how it gracefully sits and drapes, and secondly, to meticulously and evenly distribute the fabric in a most pleasing and aesthetically appealing manner. Just like this precisely, and please do not ever forget, I am indeed stepping down by exactly 1 full centimeter right here at this very spot. Yes, and I realized that I shifted a little right here, like this. This is how I'll sew it on. At the very least, you should pin it securely in place right here and there, exactly where you will eventually want it to be. Carefully sew your fabric lining to the sturdy cord. Yes, that's right. You can hardly see anything because of these handles, but listen to what I'm saying. Okay, I'll try to focus it now right here. So let's try to show this on camera. There's no point because the focus shifts and everything is blurry. You pin it all the way around, and I'll show you an invisible stitch that we'll use to sew on the lining. Blogger. Okay girls, I pinned it on just roughly, so here's my lining. Next I also smoothed out the bottom. If your fabric isn't as soft as mine, the lining will be stiffer. That's why I mentioned at the beginning that it's better to use somewhat denser fabrics. But I had this soft one at home and it matched the color really well, so that's actually why I chose it. Let's carefully sew on the delicate lining. Take your trusty needle and a suitable length of thread. The precise color of the chosen thread doesn't necessarily have to perfectly match the exact shade of your beautiful lining fabric or the cord you are using for this project. The seam is completely invisible, ladies, so please pay very close attention to this important detail. You absolutely do not necessarily have to match the tone of the fabric exactly. Yes, one more thing. This part here is a bit bigger for me than this one. So I'm going to shift the center a little over here to distribute it better. The lining, because here I have a bit too much fabric. Well, these are details you can adjust later. So what do? A little below the stitching line, we secure our thread. Next, I'll remove this here because I'm going to shift it a bit over here. I'll start sewing from this spot. I'll zoom in now. We need to carefully pierce through the delicate fold of this fabric. much like we meticulously did when we were sewing along the very top edge. Now I will proceed to do it myself. Like this. I'm piercing through the fold. The first stitches are the hardest. Like this. Right now, the seam isn't very visible before the stitch. I'll secure it and then show you better. And I'm sewing it to the cord, but in such a way that we avoid the leather. I'll secure it now and repeat the process. Here you need to insert the needle right where it came out. Then I move over here where it's harder to sew the leather. Now I'll show you properly how we pierce it, because it turned out a bit messy here. Look, here's your fabric fold. You pierce it horizontally, like this, for 5 to 7 centimeters. And you've securely fastened it to your own. Pierce the base of the bag. Here, we insert the needle into the same spot where it comes out. And here we shift to the left. And repeat the manipulation again. We make a careful stitch by hand. On the delicate fabric positioned horizontally, this is precisely how we will effectively demonstrate it to you. And secure it to the bag along the straight line where you are sewing. And this is how we move along this perimeter. You sew around in a circle like this. Here you can insert it a bit deeper as you find convenient. The main thing is that it looks neat. And that's it. Sew the lining on your own. I think the idea is clear. Again, we pierce through. I'm showing it on camera for the last time because honestly my hands just can't do it anymore. Focus the way it needs to be. So here, I pulled it tight and sewed it to the bag. With this kind of invisible stitch, we sew on our lining. We move in a circle and I'll meet you to take a look at our bag. Girls, I've sewn in the lining. This is how it looks inside. The soft fabric sags a little bit. It doesn't cling to the sides as much as a stiff fabric would. I personally prefer stiff fabrics, but the soft one also looks nice. And now our bag is ready. I'll also clearly demonstrate to you precisely how to securely attach our specially designed strap to the sturdy D-ring. I've already carefully attached one side and deliberately left the other side unattached to thoroughly demonstrate the process for you. Girls, look, if you carefully unscrew your holster screw to be absolutely precise and accurate in your adjustments, it securely screws in with a simple screw, just like this one. To properly insert your watch strap, you will first need to carefully unscrew this particular component. You carefully pull this sturdy bridge over here, and this is precisely what you will get. Next, we absolutely need the small screw to face directly outward like this. So just like this, in this particular manner, then we meticulously put this tiny little part onto the secure strap. It's better to put it on now, because when you already have another screw attached, it's very hard to do since everything is quite tight here. But this way, you secure it like this, and all that's left is to center it and attach it. There's one important point. To keep your small screws from loosening over time, you can use a strong adhesive glue and then put just a small drop, for example, precisely right in here on the thread, so that the crucial screw doesn't accidentally come loose or completely undone during its intended and important use. This is a vital step for safety and functionality. Let's carefully and thoroughly do this together, ensuring everything is perfectly secure. I'm working with screws for the first time, but it's not my first time fastening things. Just like this, literally just a tiny drop. And everything else needs to be done fairly quickly and skillfully. So we carefully take it, position it precisely into its designated spot, and then we will accurately center it. And then we screw it in. Carefully screw it in, ensuring that it securely fits into the designated groove, making a perfect connection. I must say, you've thoroughly tightened it very well. And once the adhesive glue completely sets and fully cures, it absolutely won't be able to come undone or detach anymore. And your newly installed secure strap will then be perfectly in place and ready for use. And our Naomi bag is completely finished. Here's the beauty we've created, a very stylish, textured, interesting, and modern model. Girls, I hope you enjoyed the process. You've made your own beautiful Naomi bags, and now I'll show you another one in green, along with all three that I created. Girls, let me show you the Naomi in pine green with leather hardware. The color is cognac. These two shades look great together like this. Look at how stylish and uniquely beautiful it turned out. I especially made it completely by myself, even sewing in the lining. Everything looks wonderful, and each Naomi has become special to me in its own way. And I see the reaction on social media. How did you like it? I'm really pleased, girls. Now I'll show all three bags together, and with that, our masterclass will come to an end. Dear girls, so my masterclass on the Naomi model has come to an end. Here are the three beauties I made during the start of the project. Each one has a unique look. A lot depends on your combinations of leather and cord, on the combinations you choose. So I wish you creativity, inspiration, and gorgeous Naomi bags. I will be eagerly waiting to see your creations. I am very pleased that you appreciated this model so much. I wish everyone success. Thank you all for being with me, for liking my bag designs, and of course my master classes. This concludes this master class. Thank you all for your attention. This was Oksana Rudko with you. My brand of crocheted bags is La Accessory. See you at new master classes.